Hello Story Store listeners. Before we start this interesting story, please subscribe this channel, Story Store, and hit the bell icon. Thank you. Now, here we go. The phone call arrived on a quiet Wednesday morning, just as I was pruning the lavender bushes in the small backyard of my cozy townhouse. At 67, I, Clara Whitmore, had found solace in these simple routines since my husband George passed 3 years ago. The sun was warm, the air smelled of earth and blooms, and I was humming an old tune when my phone buzzed against the wooden garden table. It was my son, Nathan, his voice tight, almost hesitant. "Mom, we need to talk about the family vacation." My heart lifted, a fragile hope stirring. After George's death, my connection with Nathan and my 2 grandsons, Liam and Oliver, had frayed. Family gatherings were sparse, and when they happened, I felt like a guest in my own family's life. "That sounds lovely, dear," I said, brushing dirt from my hands. "Where are we going?" A pause stretched across the line, heavy and unsettling. "Well, that's the thing, Mom," Nathan said. "Lydia and I have been planning this trip to the Bahamas for months. It's more of a couples retreat, you know, just adults. The boys are staying with Lydia's parents." The words landed like a stone in my chest. I gripped the phone, my other hand steadying myself against the table. "I see," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "And when was this decided?" Another pause. I heard Lydia's voice in the background, low and indistinct, but her tone carried an edge. "Look, Mom," Nathan continued, "it's just that we never get time alone. With work, the kids, everything eats a lot. We need this." I understood. Truly, I did. Young couples deserved their moments of escape. But the way he said it, the faint irritation in his voice, as if I were unreasonable for even wanting to be included, cut deeper than I expected. "Of course, Nathan," I said, "you and Lydia deserve your time." But Lydia wasn't done. She took the phone, her voice dripping with that false sweetness she wielded like a weapon. "Clara, honey," she began, "Nathan and I were talking, and we think maybe this is a good time for you to consider other options for your living situation. You know, somewhere with more support." My blood turned to ice. "What do you mean?" I asked, though I already knew. "Oh, there are some wonderful retirement communities nearby," she said, her tone bright, as if she were suggesting a spa day. "Places where you could make friends your own age, have activities planned, not worry about maintaining a house or cooking. It'd be like a little vacation for you while we're in the Bahamas." The cruelty of it stole my breath. Here I was, a woman who had raised her son, buried her husband, and kept her independence. Through every storm life had thrown at me, being told to shuffle off to a nursing home while they sipped cocktails on a beach. "You mean a nursing home?" I said flatly. Lydia laughed, that high, tinkling laugh she used when she thought she was being clever. "Oh, Clara, not a nursing home. Think of it as a resort for seniors. You could take your own little vacation there." Nathan's voice came faintly through the line. "Lydia," but she cut him off. "Nathan agrees it might be good for you to explore your options, don't you, honey?" Silence. My son's silence was louder than any words. He wasn't going to defend me. He wasn't going to challenge his wife. In that moment, I felt more alone than I had in the long, empty months after George's death. "I see," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "Well, you too have a wonderful time in the Bahamas." I hung up before they could respond, standing in my garden, surrounded by the lavender and peonies George and I had planted together decades ago. Something inside me cracked not my resolve, which had been forged through years of trials, but the last illusion I'd held about my place in Nathan's life. I walked back into my quiet townhouse, past the framed photos of Nathan's childhood, past the finger-painted cards Liam and Oliver had made me last Easter, past the remnants of a life devoted to family, In my bedroom, I sat on the edge of the bed George and I had shared for 45 years, and let the tears fall. They wanted me gone, not just from their vacation, but from their lives. The woman who had sacrificed her ambitions, who had worked late nights to pay for Nathan's college, who had spent countless hours reading bedtime stories to her grandsons, was now an inconvenience to be packed away. But as the tears dried, something else stirred a memory of who I was before I became Nathan's mother or George's wife. A memory of a woman who had built something remarkable from nothing. Lydia thought she knew me. She saw a lonely widow, easy to dismiss. She had no idea who she was dealing with. As I wiped my face, a decision formed. If they wanted to exclude me, so be it. But they were about to learn that Clara Whitmore was not a woman to be underestimated. That night, sleep eluded me. Lydia's words echoed, but instead of pain, they ignited memories I'd buried long ago. I rose from bed and walked to the small study that doubled as a storage room. Behind boxes of Nathan's old report cards and family albums was a safe George had installed decades ago. Inside were documents I hadn't touched in years. The papers were brittle, the ink faded, but the letterhead still sent a thrill through me. Blue Horizon Travel, founded 1980. My signature stood bold at the top, beside George's. I had been the president, he the vice president. I was 25 when I started Blue Horizon Travel. Nathan was just a toddler, and George was a junior engineer at a local firm. We needed extra income, but more than that, I needed something of my own. I'd always had a knack for logistics, for connecting people with experiences that made them feel alive. It began modestly. I booked trips for neighbors, colleagues from George's office, members of our book club. I had a gift for finding overlooked treasures, small airlines with exceptional service, family run-ins that outshone chain hotels, local guides who brought history to life. Word spread, and within 3 years, Blue Horizon had grown from our dining room to a small office in town, then to multiple locations across the region. We specialized in crafting journeys that felt personal, where every client was treated like family. The turning point came in 1987, when a struggling regional airline, Coastal Skyways, caught my attention. Their routes were solid, but their marketing was non-existent. Where others saw a failing business, I saw potential. I convinced George to take out a second mortgage to buy a 15% stake in the airline. He was skeptical. Ethan was 7, and stability mattered, but I'd done my research. I knew Coastal Skyways' fleet was reliable, their customer feedback strong. They just needed someone to tell their story. I joined their board, the only woman, and the youngest by a decade. The men in their tailored suits dismissed me at first, assuming I was there to take notes. They stopped underestimating me after my first presentation, a marketing plan that boosted bookings by 35% in 4 months. By 1992, Coastal Skyways had rebranded as Coastal Sky Airlines, a rising star in the regional market. Our stake was worth more than George's annual salary 10 times over, but success demanded sacrifices. I was constantly on the road, meeting investors, scouting new routes, negotiating with hotels. Nathan spent evenings with sitters, and George began to resent the nights he spent alone. The breaking point came when Nathan was 11. He'd landed a role in his school's production of The Wizard of Oz, practicing his lines as the Scarecrow for weeks. I was supposed to be there, front row, cheering him on. But I was in Denver, finalizing a deal to expand Coastal Sky's routes. George called me after the performance. Nathan had stumbled through his lines, searching the audience for me. When he didn't find me, he froze. George said he could hear Nathan's heart breaking from the stage. I flew home the next day. Nathan was in his room, still in his strong costume, eyes red. When I tried to hug him, he pulled away. "You weren't there, Mom. I looked for you, and you weren't there." That night, I made a choice. I called an emergency board meeting and announced I was selling my shares in Coastal Sky. The board thought I was unhinged. George thought I'd lost my edge. The offer was enough to secure our family's future, but stepping away from the empire I'd built felt like losing a piece of myself. I did it anyway. Nathan needed his mother more than I needed boardroom victories. What I never told anyone, not George, not Nathan, was that I kept a 3% stake, tucked away in a trust under my maiden name, Clara Bennett. It was a precaution, a piece of my past I couldn't fully let go. Coastal Sky grew into a national powerhouse, going public in 1996, acquiring competitors, weathering industry storms. By 2015, it was one of the top airlines in the country, known for its customer-first approach. That 3% stake, it was worth more than most people earned in a lifetime. After George's death, the lawyers handling his estate found the trust. They were stunned I'd never touched the dividends, which had compounded into a fortune. The latest statement, dated 3 months ago, showed numbers that made my head spin. Lydia thought she was dealing with a frail widow who could be nudged into a facility. She didn't know I was a founding investor in the very airline they'd be flying to the Bahamas. Sitting in my study, surrounded by the ghosts of my past, I felt a spark I hadn't known in years: power, purpose, the thrill of holding a hand no one knew I had. Lydia wanted me to vacation in a nursing home while she and Nathan lounged in paradise. How fitting that their flight was on Coastal Sky Airlines, the company I'd helped create. As I closed the safe, a smile curved my lips. If Lydia wanted to play games, she'd soon learn she'd picked the wrong opponent. The next morning, I woke with a clarity I hadn't felt since George's passing. I made a proper breakfast: pancakes with fresh berries, a nod to the elaborate brunches I used to host for clients. Then I sat at my desk and began making calls. My first was to Ellen Harper, the attorney who'd managed my Coastal Sky holdings. Her voice warmed when she recognized me. "Clara, I was wondering when you'd call. Have you thought about activating your portfolio?" "I need to access some funds," I said, "and I need details on Coastal Sky's shareholder privileges." Within hours, Ellen sent me a comprehensive report. As a founding investor, I had benefits most passengers could only dream of: access to executive lounges, priority booking, and a permanent first-class upgrade on any Coastal Sky flight. Next, I called Coastal Sky's VIP services. When I provided my shareholder credentials, the representative's tone shifted to reverence. "Ms. Whitmore, it's an honor. How can we assist you?" "I'd like to book a trip to the Bahamas, departing this Saturday, returning the following." Saturday? I knew Nathan and Lydia's flight, details Lydia had made sure to mention. Their 1 p.m. departure during her condescending call. "The 1 p.m. flight to Nassau, please." "Certainly," the representative said. "You're confirmed in first class, seat 1A, at no charge, per your shareholder benefits." My final call was to an exclusive resort in the Bahamas, Paradise Cove, a gem I'd discovered during my travel agency days. "See, I'd like to book your presidential suite for a week, starting Saturday." "I'm sorry, ma'am," the manager replied. "The suite is booked months in advance, but we have a deluxe oceanfront room available." "This is Clara Whitmore," I said. "I believe I have priority booking status." A pause, then rapid typing. "Ms. Whitmore, my apologies. Yes, the presidential suite is yours. It's an honor to host you again." I'd never stayed there myself, but I'd sent countless high-profile clients to Paradise Cove over the years. They remembered me. By Friday evening, I was ready. I'd gone shopping, trading my usual cardigans for a tailored navy blazer, cream slacks, and a silk scarf in Coastal Sky's signature Tila, subtle nod to my legacy. I told no one of my plans, not Nathan, not Lydia, not even my neighbor, Mrs. Callahan, who usually fed my cat when I was away. This was my surprise, and I wanted it to land like a thunderbolt. Saturday dawned, bright and humid. I called a car service to the airport, bypassing the hassle of driving. The driver, a cheerful man named Miguel, asked about my trip. The Bahamas, I said, and he grinned. Lucky you. Vacation. You could say that, I replied, imagining Lydia's face when she saw me at the airport. I skipped the crowded check-in lines and headed to the first-class counter. The agent's eyes widened at my name. Ms. Whitmore, what an honor. You're all set. Would you like to relax in our executive lounge? The lounge was an oasis of calm, plush armchairs, complimentary mimosas, and views of planes gliding across the tarmac. I sipped coffee and watched the bustle below, remembering the pride I'd felt seeing Coastal Sky's teal and silver planes in the early days. At 12:30, boarding was announced. As a first-class passenger, I was among the first to settle into seat 1A, accepting a glass of sparkling water from the flight attendant. I was flipping through a travel magazine when I heard Lydia's voice, sharp with indignation. Excuse me, there's been a mistake. These are our seats. I looked up to see her standing in the aisle, waving her boarding pass. Nathan behind her looking uncomfortable. The flight attendant checked her tablet. I'm sorry, ma'am, but you're ticketed for seats 1 for A and 1 for B in Economy Plus. First class is fully booked. That's impossible, Lydia snapped. I specifically requested first class. You're on the upgrade wait list, the attendant said, but no seats opened up. Lydia's face flushed, her voice rising. This is ridiculous. Do you know who my husband is? His mother helped build this airline. I nearly laughed. Nathan tugged her arm. Lydia, please, let's just go to our seats. But Lydia wasn't. Done. I demand to speak to a supervisor. I stood, setting my magazine aside. Lydia, Nathan, what a lovely surprise. They froze. Nathan's jaw dropped, and Lydia looked like she'd seen a specter. Mom, Nathan whispered. What are you doing here? Before I could answer, the flight attendant approached me. Ms. Whitmore, is everything all right? Are these passengers bothering you? The question hung in the air. Lydia's eyes darted between me and the attendant, confusion mounting. Not at all, I said smoothly. This is my son and daughter-in-law, though I believe they're seated in economy. The attendant nodded. Seats 1 for A and 1 for B. If you'd follow me, I'll show you to your section. Lydia stood rooted, staring at my first-class seat, my sparkling water, the tray of gourmet snacks. I don't understand, she stammered. How did you, another flight attendant, wearing the senior crew badge, approached? Ms. Whitmore, I'm Elena Torres, your attendant today. On behalf of Captain Alvarez and the crew, welcome aboard. It's an honor to have one of Coastal Sky's founding shareholders with us. The silence was electric. Lydia's face cycled. Through shock, disbelief, and something like fear, Nathan gaped, struggling to process. Founding shareholder. Lydia squeaked. Elena smiled. Oh yes, Ms. Whitmore was pivotal in Coastal Sky's early growth. We have a display honoring her and the other founders at our headquarters. Nathan found his voice. Mom, how are you here? In first class. Before I could respond, the captain's voice came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we're privileged to have Ms. Clara Whitmore, one of Coastal Sky Airline's founding investors, on board today. Ms. Whitmore, thank you for your vision that shaped this airline. Applause rippled through first class. I raised my glass, smiling graciously. Lydia looked like she might collapse. Ma'am, Elena said to her, please take your assigned seats so we can complete boarding. Lydia stumbled toward economy. Nathan trailing, his voice low and urgent as he questioned her. As the plane taxied, I settled back, a quiet satisfaction warming me. Lydia's expression had been worth every moment of planning. 30 minutes into the flight, Nathan appeared at my seat, pale and shaken. Mom, can we talk? Elena approached, Is everything all right, Ms. Whitmore? It's fine, I said. This is my son, Nathan. May he sit here briefly? I gestured to the empty seat beside me. Nathan sank down, looking exhausted. Mom, I don't understand what's happening. Lydia's back there, practically hyperventilating. She keeps saying she made a horrible mistake. I sipped my water, studying him. When had he grown so weary, his eyes lined with stress? What did you think would happen, Nathan, when Lydia suggested I go to a retirement home while you went to the Bahamas? What did you expect? His face reddened. That's not what she meant. She thought that I was a burden to be managed. I finished, and you let her. I didn't agree, he said weakly. I just didn't know how to handle it. I searched his face for the boy who'd clung to me during thunderstorms, who'd shared every detail of his school day. Nathan, what do you know about my life before you were born? He frowned. You and Dad met in college. You worked as a travel agent, then stayed home with me. That's it, right? Just Mom, I said, the words sharper than intended. Someone to cook, clean, and cheer you on. He looked confused. Well, yeah, you were Mom. I pulled a document from my bag, a copy of Blue Horizons Incorporation papers. Nathan's eyes widened at my name above George's. This can't be real, he whispered. It's very real, I said. I built Coastal Sky Airlines from an idea into a national brand. Your father and I risked everything, our home, our savings. But I stepped away because you needed me. I thought that was enough. He stared at the paper, then at me. Why didn't you tell me? Why give it up? Because you were more important than any boardroom, I said. But when Lydia suggested a nursing home, and you stayed silent, I realized you saw me as an inconvenience, not a person with a past, with power. Mom, I'm so sorry, he said, head in his hands. I had no idea. Lydia didn't know either, didn't she? I asked. In all these years, have I ever seemed helpless, unable to manage my life? He looked up, realization dawning. Lydia hadn't acted out of concern, but out of resentment, and he'd enabled her. She knew what she was doing, I said softly. She saw a chance to push me out, and you let her. Before he could respond, Lydia appeared, eyes red, hands trembling. I need to talk to you, she said, looking at me. Alina stepped forward. Ma'am, the seatbelt sign is on. It's all right, I said, but Mrs. Whitmore will need to be brief. Lydia flinched at the formal address. Clara, there's been a misunderstanding? No misunderstanding, I said evenly. You showed me who you are, and now you're scared of the consequences. Her mouth opened, closed. You don't understand the pressure I'm under, managing everything, managing me out of your life. I cut in. Return to your seat, Lydia. We'll talk in the Bahamas. As she retreated, Nathan looked desperate. Mom, please don't let this ruin our family. I patted his hand. Nathan, I'm not the one who tried to ruin this family. But I'll decide what happens next. The Bahamas were a dream, turquoise waters, swaying palms, and the kind of luxury I hadn't indulged in for years. Paradise Cove's presidential suite was a masterpiece. White marble floors, a private infinity pool, and views that stretched to the horizon. The staff treated me like royalty, a nod to the clients I'd sent their way decades ago. Nathan and Lydia were staying at a budget hotel across the island. Nathan called twice, asking to meet, but I declined. I needed space to decide what I wanted from this reckoning. On the fourth day, as I sipped coffee on my terrace, the concierge called. Ms. Whitmore, you have visitors, Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore. Shall I send them up? I sighed. Yes, please. They arrived looking subdued, Lydia clutching a tissue, Nathan's shoulders slumped. I gestured to the sofa, taking the armchair opposite. The power dynamic was clear. This was my domain. We need to talk, Lydia whispered. Yes, I agreed. But first, Understand this. I came here to enjoy my vacation, because I can afford any vacation I choose. Nathan's eyes roamed. The sweet mom, I had no idea you had this kind of money. Why keep it a secret? Why would I tell you? I said. You never asked about my life, my dreams. To you, I was just mom, there to serve your needs. Lydia shifted. Clara, I owe you an apology. I misjudged your situation. No, Lydia, I said. You tried to manipulate it. You wanted me gone. That's not true, she protested. I was thinking of what's best for everyone. Stop, I said, my voice cutting through her lies. We all know what you did. You saw me as an obstacle and thought a nursing home would solve it. She looked to Nathan, but he stared at his hands. The suggestion wasn't about my well-being, I continued. It was about removing an inconvenience. You've never liked me, Lydia. You've tolerated me, barely, since Nathan brought you home. But you underestimated me. I never said. You were powerless, she said weakly. You suggested I be institutionalized while you vacationed, I replied. If that's not treating me as powerless, what is? Nathan spoke up. Mom, I should have stopped her. I should have defended. You? Yes, I said. Your silence showed me where I stand. Silence fell, broken only by the distant waves. Lydia spoke, voice trembling. What can we do to fix this? I studied her, searching for sincerity, but finding fear. Lydia, for years I've watched you snapping at waiters, gossiping about family, manipulating Nathan with tantrums. I stayed silent, thinking it wasn't my place. But when you tried to erase me, you made it my business. What do you want? Nathan asked, voice hollow. I walked to the window, the ocean sparkling. Below, honesty. Lydia, tell Nathan why you suggested the retirement home, not some excuse. The real reason. Her hands shook, tears falling. I wanted you gone, she whispered. Every time you're around, I feel judged, like I'll never be enough. I thought if you were somewhere else, we'd all be happier. Nathan stared at her, stunned. How could you think that was okay? I was desperate, she cried. Living in your mother's shadow, every story about her sacrifices, her perfection, it makes me feel worthless. Her honesty was raw. Painful. I turned to Nathan. And you? Why did you let her? He looked away. It was easier than fighting. Lydia gets so upset, and I just wanted peace, even if it meant hurting you. The truth settled between us. Nathan had chosen compliance over courage. Lydia's insecurities had turned her cruel, and I had been silent too long. Now we know where we stand, I said, returning to my chair. 8 months later, I stood on the balcony of my new home in Santa Barbara, the Pacific stretching before me like a promise. The house was modest but exquisite, open windows, a garden bursting with roses, and a view that made every morning a gift. I'd bought it outright a month after returning from the Bahamas, using a fraction of my coastal sky dividends. The decision to move wasn't impulsive. In the Bahamas, after that confrontation, I'd reflected on my life. Did I want to return to my quiet townhouse, fading into the background of Nathan's life? Did I want to remain an afterthought? No. I'd spent decades prioritizing others, giving up my career for Nathan, living frugally after George's death to avoid being a burden. I was done. The move was seamless. I kept only what mattered: photos, George's old watch, a few sentimental trinkets, and donated the rest. My new home was furnished in soft whites and blues, echoing coastal skies colors. Nathan had called when he learned of the move, panicked. Mom, you can't just leave without telling us. Why not? I'd replied. You didn't tell me before deciding I belonged in a home. That was different, he said. We were just suggesting options. This is my option. I said. I'm choosing to live somewhere that makes me feel alive. Lydia had pleaded, tears in her voice, but my resolve was iron. Now, As I sipped wine and watched the sunset, I felt peace. My life was full volunteering at a women's entrepreneurship program, joining a local art society, even dating. James, a retired architect, saw me as Clara, not a mother or widow, but a woman with stories and dreams. Nathan called weekly now, our talks more honest. Last Sunday, he'd asked about Thanksgiving. Lydia wants to cook, to show she's changed. That's kind, I said, watching a gull soar. But I have plans. James and I are hosting friends here. You're punishing us, he said. No, Nathan, I replied. I'm living my life. When you were little, I never gave in to tantrums, because I knew it would teach you manipulation works. This isn't punishment, it's me refusing to be manipulated. What does this mean for us? He asked. It means we start over, I said. No more taking me for granted. If we can do that, maybe next year you can visit me. The sunsets here are magical. After we hung up, I watched the waves, my reflection in the glass showing a woman reborn. Liam and Oliver called often, curious about my coastal life. Grandma Clara Oliver said last week, when I grow up, I want to live by the ocean. 2. You can do anything you choose, I told him. Never let anyone tell you otherwise. Coastal Skies Board had invited me to their annual meeting, hinting at an advisory role. I was considering it not for the power, but for the chance to shape something again. At 67, my life was beginning anew, on my terms. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever faced a betrayal that forced you to rediscover your strength? Comment below and let me know where you're watching from. Love to see how far my story has traveled. If you enjoyed this, please like, share, and subscribe to Story Storer for more tales of resilience and triumph. Check out the 2 recommended stories on the final screen, their channel favorites that will surprise you. Thank you for joining me on this journey.